الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وسيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So I want to start off, inshallah ta'ala, by mentioning one of my favorite personalities in Islamic history. And this individual, I'm sure most of you know who he is, Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. Now the life of Imam Malik, I actually draw a lot of parallels with modern day life, and there's many lessons to be learned from the life of Imam Malik, because I feel like Imam Malik was one of those personalities, like many others, who was very in touch with the world that he was living in, and he was able to live and breathe and embody the spirituality of Islam as well. And actually Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, in his time, his peers would consider him to be, or some of his peers considered him to be, the most knowledgeable person alive on the face of the earth. So that is the status of Imam Malik. But today we all know the name of Imam Malik, right? We all understand his importance and his significance. There was a time in his life, rahimahullah ta'ala, where Imam Malik had made the intention, he decided to compose a Muwatta. Now I know when we think of Muwatta, we already know it's, or some of us may know, it's the book that Imam Malik composed, which is a collection of hadith. But obviously in his time, he hadn't written a Muwatta yet. And Muwatta is literally like a collection of hadith. So he mentioned to some of his peers, he said that I want to compose a Muwatta. I want to put together a collection of hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And some of his peers and colleagues, they said to him, why would you compose a Muwatta? Because there are already so many Muwattas. There's already so many collections of hadith. Why would you write another book with another collection of hadith? And Imam Malik said a few words that ring true till today. And words that many students of knowledge and scholars and ulama, they have memorized. Imam Malik replied with a very simple statement. When he was told, why would you write another Muwatta? There's already so many Muwattas. He said, مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ يَبْقَى. He said, that which is done for the sake of Allah, it remains. Now scholars have looked into this statement and they try to analyze what he actually meant here. And he actually meant a few different things. It's actually a quite deep statement. Because number one, he was saying that I'm not doing it for the sake of the people. I'm not doing it to be recognized as somebody who has a muwatta. I'm doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ, that which is done for the sake of Allah, it remains. So the reward of it, meaning the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that remains, right? So regardless of there being one muwatta or 20 muwattas, I'm seeking a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if I'm doing it for the sake of Allah, if my intention is to be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it doesn't matter how many muwattas there already are. It doesn't matter whether people accept my book or not. It doesn't matter how many people read my book or not. As a matter of fact, if not a single individual, not a single soul ever read the Muwatta of Imam Malik, which we know is not true because millions and millions of people have read and continue to read and study and benefit from the Muwatta of Imam Malik. But if no one had ever read from the Muwatta of Imam Malik, he knew that his reward is secure with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he has done it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is the security that Imam Malik felt in this deed, and inshallah ta'ala in other deeds as well. And I want to ask you, how freeing of a concept that is. That regardless of what people think, regardless of how it is viewed, regardless of whether it is accepted or not, regardless of you being praised or not praised, or regardless of you taking heat for something that you said or done. And wallahi, subhanAllah, I've come across young brothers and sisters who have spent years working on a project, and for some reason, one reason or the other, it doesn't take off. It doesn't do well. It's not recognized by people. Even though they put their sweat and tears into that project, nothing happens with it. And wallahi, it's very painful because you know what? As human beings, we have this need to be recognized. Right? We have a need to be appreciated. That's why you look at any relationship, an essential, integral part of any relationship is appreciating the person in your relationship. And not only just appreciating them in your heart, but expressing to them that you appreciate them. And you appreciate all that they do for you and so on and so forth. And that makes that relationship healthy. And it makes that relationship grow. And it empowers that relationship. So that's how we are as human beings. And so imagine how freeing it is to know that no matter what people think, regardless of the success or the failure of anything that we do, that if we are doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we are always appreciated. And not only are we appreciated in a way that no human being can ever appreciate us. We are appreciated by Rabbul Alameen, by the Lord of everything in creation. That is the type of appreciation that can truly bring rest to the heart. Because you know what? We live in a society where a lot of our deeds are very public. And it's very interesting, subhanAllah, most of what we do, and I have no qualms in making a general statement, a broad statement like that, but most of what we do is in the spotlight. It's in the public. And we have social media to thank for that, obviously, right? And by the way, I'm not against social media, right? But I think we need to take a look at social media, and we need to really we need to understand how it fits in to our lives as a whole, but also how we balance our spirituality with social media, right? So what do we do to make sure that social media is not impeding on our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So in a world where pretty much everything that we do is done for people, it's done in the spotlight, what happens to our spirituality in a world like that? What happens to our spirituality in a world where we judge success or failure based off of how many likes or shares we've gotten on something that we've done? Right? And that is extremely problematic. And as I said, I have actually counseled young people who have broken down and said, you know, I did so much for my community, or my MSA, or you know what, even my family, or for my husband, or for my wife, or for my children. Right? And you really think about, subhanAllah, the plight of parents, and I know there's not a lot of parents in the room right now, but I'm a parent myself, and I'm a fairly new parent. I have an older son who's 3, and a newborn son as well. Right? So I'm fairly new at this, but I can now, having children of my own, I can empathize with parents unlike I could ever empathize before. Because, you know, a lot of parents would come to me when their children are going through like their teenage rebellious age, right? So 14, 15, 16, 17, depending on the child, could even be up to like 20 or so on and so forth, right? And usually the parent comes to me and they're like, I don't recognize this individual. Like, this 15-year-old is not the person that I raised. This is not the person that I sacrificed everything for. I don't recognize them because I don't see that being reciprocated. I don't see that love. I don't see that appreciation. I just don't see it. And how am I supposed to come to terms with that? And I used to tell parents straight up, I used to be like, y'all need to chill out, right? Because they need time. Right? They're growing, they're changing, they're transitioning into becoming adults. And the last thing they need right now is someone telling them that you know nothing, right? And you better listen to us and so on and so forth. Like, they're not gonna, no matter what you do, right? They're in it for some, right? Not everyone, obviously. But somebody who's going through that transition and someone's going through that phase in their life, I often used to tell parents, like, back up just a little bit, right? Give them some space, right? And now, as a parent myself, I still say that, right? And I very, very much still believe that. But the way I look at parents and the way I can empathize with parents is very different. Because, you know, my older son, he's only 3. And I never thought in my life that I could sacrifice the way I've sacrificed for this 3-year-old. In these 3 years, what I have done, I never thought that I would be able to do the things that I did. Not only that, forget sacrifice, just love itself, right? We think we understand love, if we've fallen in love or whatever and this and that, and I think all of us on some level we're like, yeah, I know what love is, right? I understand love. Unless you have a child, you don't understand love. Because I'll tell you from my personal experience, I didn't even know I had that capacity of love in me. And don't get me wrong, like I love my mom, I love my wife, I love my family, like that's all well and great. And I thought that was my capacity of love, like I couldn't love anyone more than that until my son was born. And it blew the roof off of what I thought was my capacity of love. And so to now grow up and have this child grow up and to teach them everything, and literally, when a child is born, and I have a newborn now and I'm going through the cycle once again, you literally have to do everything for a newborn. Like literally, if you were to leave them on their own, they wouldn't survive, right? If you were to not do anything, the child would die, right? You have to make sure, like your number one goal as a newborn, FYI, for when you have kids, inshallah ta'ala, your number one goal is to make sure your child stays alive, right? You have to feed them. You have to burp them. If you don't burp them, by the way, that could be problematic as well. You have to make sure, like sometimes, as a newborn, subhanAllah, newborns don't do a lot, right? They just sleep and eat and poop. Like that's it, right? And I'm used to my 3-year-old who's very, very active, running around, going crazy, whatever. And sometimes my newborn's just laying there, and I'm looking at him like, is everything okay? Like I walked up to my newborn and I put my finger underneath his nose, and my wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just making sure he's still breathing, right? Because he's just laying there, right? So you're 100% responsible. You do everything for your children, everything. And what happens when they grow up and you hear those dreadful words where your child says to you, like, Dad, I hate you. Or Mom, I hate you. Like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you. Right? That can be an extremely painful situation, an extremely painful experience. Right? And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from that, even though it's very likely. Right? It happens. It's part of life. But once again, if we are doing something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, we love our children, and we want that appreciation, but if we understand that we are raising our child for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah has given us a responsibility, and we have tried our best, and we work our hardest, and I'm not saying that's going to be easy, but that is our end goal. مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ يَبْقَى, that which is done for the sake of Allah remains, meaning we will always be appreciated if we are seeking that appreciation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also, it is very freeing to know that whatever happens, and a lot of, like I said, I don't know how many parents are in the house, but it's painful for parents to feel like they're not in control, because so much of our lives with our children, we are in control. Like we control everything that our kids do, right? As I said, a newborn, you have to do everything for them. You control what they eat, you control what they do, and up to a certain age, you control what they watch and what they see and how they speak, and you define you define their world for them, right? They don't know a world other than the world that you have defined. That's all they know. But that at some point, they start to become independent. At some point, they start to have their own thoughts and feelings and opinions and decisions and so on and so forth. And I know parents that have a very, very difficult time letting go. Not because their only goal is to just control the life of their child, but obviously they're like, homie, I got like 30 years on you, right? So just sit down and listen to what I have to say, because I've been through it all and you don't know what you're talking about, right? It's as simple as that. Like, I want good for you. I want the best for you. I love you more than I love probably any other human being, and I love you so I just want the best for you. So just shut up and listen to me, right? That's it. Like, it's out of love. But we all know that's not how life works. And we cannot control. No matter how much we try to control, we can't control. And sometimes an excessive amount of control actually makes it, ironically, that we lose even more control. Sometimes the more parents hold on to their kids and try to restrict them, the more they push them away, ironically, right? So at some point, We have to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At some point, we have to say, look, I did my best. There's nothing else that I can do. Like, I tried. And doing your best doesn't mean you're perfect. No human being is perfect, right? And I'm talking about parenting here, but by the way, this applies to every single endeavor in life, right? We're not perfect. Whether you're in an MSA, whether you're studying for your classes, whether you're mentoring, like whatever you're doing in life, you're never going to be perfect, right? Not only, like I said earlier, not only are you not always going to be appreciated, you're never going to be perfect. And doing things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means that you leave that perfection to Allah. And you understand that just because you're not perfect, it's okay. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is in charge. The results are with Allah. That is what tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Reliance upon Allah. Reliance upon Allah means you do everything that you can do, but you leave the results to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And imagine living your life like that. That no matter what you do in life, no matter what project you take on, no matter what career path you choose, and no matter what you do, that you give it your all, you try your best, right? And best is relative for all of us, right? Your best may be different than my best, right? And so we try our best, but we leave the results with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once again, that's a truly freeing feeling. That you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who was given the biggest responsibility ever given to a human being, and that is to deliver the message of Islam to the whole world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded him, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You can't guide those whom you love. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Rather, it is Allah who guides whomever He wills. You cannot force someone to be guided. You cannot force someone to listen to you. You cannot force someone to follow the truth. وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ. The only thing that you are in charge of is to deliver the message. Because the Prophet ﷺ, out of his deep sense of compassion and love and empathy, it was very, very hard for him to see not only his own close loved ones, but humanity, human beings as a whole, not following the truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to remind him, لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعُ نَفْسَكَ أَلَّا يَكُونُ مُؤْمِنِينَ. That you might kill yourself out of grief for people not becoming believers. Like, it's not on you. It is not your responsibility to make sure everybody follows the message. It is just your responsibility to convey the message. And yes, that may be difficult, but also it is freeing. And so going back to Imam Malik rahimallahu ta'ala, Imam Malik, he said, مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ يَبْقَى. That which is done for the sake of Allah remains, meaning the reward remains. And I want to share with you one more example before I get to the second benefit of doing things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us in authentic hadith, إِذَا قَامَتِ السَّاعَةِ. He said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, if the hour has been established, meaning the day of judgment has started, وَفِي يَدِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَسِيلًا. And one of you have in your hand the means to plant a tree. And the Prophet ﷺ that said, فَنِسْتَطَاعَ. If you have the ability to stand up and plant it, then do so. So what is this hadith telling us? This hadith is saying that imagine you have in your hands like some seeds or something, you can plant a tree. And and the day of judgment has Prophet said, qamat, like it started. Not only is it coming or whatever, but it's started, like the day of judgment has started. It's here. Prophet said, if you're able to stand up and plant those seeds, then do so. And you would think to yourself, why? But why? Why would we do that? Because what is the purpose of planting a tree? What is the purpose of planting anything? It's to see it grow, to get the fruits from that tree, to get something, some benefit, maybe some shade, like something. But if we know that we're going to plant this tree and nothing's going to happen, because the Day of Judgment started, time's up, game over. Why would we plant that tree? Why would we do that? And one of the answers is that because we're doing it not only for this life, but we're doing it for the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning if we are able to get that reward, the reward of planting that tree, then we get that reward. And that's an analogy for life as a whole, because some people, like they live their life, and I'm going to give a talk later on about how life is fleeting and life is short, but some people take that to an extreme. And they're like, what's the point of doing anything in life? We could die tomorrow. And that's true. But we don't live our life like that. Because we understand that we work for this dunya, for the sake of this dunya, and for the sake of the akhirah. We work for this life, yes, for rewards in this life, but more importantly, for the rewards of the akhirah. Because that is what will remain even if this life doesn't remain. Even if this world is destroyed, the world of the afterlife remains. That is why we excel at what we do. Not because we need to be appreciated, not because we need to be recognized, not even because we need to see the fruits of our labor in this life. Because we may never see it. It may never happen. Right? We may, like that tree, we're not going to see that tree, but we're going to see the fruits of our labor in the afterlife. So that's number one. Number two, Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that which is done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remains. He also meant that Allah will take care of you in this life as well. And what is the proof for that? The proof for that is the very fact that when I say the Muwatta today, we don't think of any individual other than who? Who do we think of? Imam Malik. And that's why the word Muwatta is synonymous with Imam Malik. So even though there were dozens of Muwattas at the time of Imam Malik, Allah preserved the work of Imam Malik, and our scholars say perhaps it is because of the sincerity of Imam Malik. Perhaps Imam Malik was like, you know what? Once again, the outcome, the result is not in my hand. It's with Allah. And as long as I'm doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will take care of it. Right? And that's why I know sometimes in the world that we're living in, we feel helpless. Whether it be what's happening in Palestine, whether it be what's happening in Burma, whether it be what's happening to our Muslim brothers and sisters in China, and we feel like we're thousands of miles away. What can we do? And somebody's like, let's do a fundraiser, let's raise some money, and there's always that cynic that's like, what is my $10 going to do? Right? What is my little effort? What is my post on social media going to do? Right? But the reality is that if we're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we do our best. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one, has a wisdom in everything that He does. And number two, we know that it's not in our hands. We try our best once again, and we leave the outcome to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I want to leave you, inshallah ta'ala, with just a couple things. Number one, how do we attain sincerity in our actions? Because I know, my whole talk is about doing things for the right reasons, right? Doing in a world where people do things in public, it's kind of changing the paradigm. And doing things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number one, just take an account of yourself. How much of our life do we spend doing things publicly versus how much of our lives do we spend doing things privately? Right? So if we're doing 10 things online, if we're doing 10 things in public, then maybe it needs to, our private lives, our private good deeds that we're doing for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that no one knows about, it needs to match that. There has to be a balance. Number two, one of the ways to increase our sincerity, and by the way, sincerity is not an on and off switch. You're not either sincere or not sincere. That's one of the traps that people fall into, where they'll be like, well, since I'm not sincere, I'm not going to do it. Since I'm not doing it for the sake of Allah, or since I don't feel 100% sincere in my actions, then what's the point? Right? And that's not how sincerity works. Sincerity goes up and down. We can be more sincere and less sincere. And that's why we never leave an action out of fear of doing it for the wrong reasons. We keep doing the action and we work on our intentions. And my message here is not for you to stop doing the work that you're doing, whether it be activism or seeking knowledge or helping out in your community or whatever endeavor, even your careers or anything. It's not for you to stop doing it. It's for you to work on your intentions. is for us to really take a step back, and just as we spend time working for that project, likewise we spend time working on our intentions as well. And that is a spiritual matter. That is something that goes beyond the realm of just this worldly life, and that is the difference between a Muslim and a non-Muslim. A Muslim does something not only for this life, but there's a spiritual factor to it. And that shows us that as a Muslim, spirituality must permeate everything that we do. And that is what it means to be a Muslim, to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is what we mean when we say Islam is a way of life, right? Not that, subhanAllah, we just think that we have to look the part and that means like you look like a Muslim and that's it and so on. That's a very minor part of Islam. It's a part of it, right? The rules that Allah has given to us and so on and so forth. But Islam, living Islam, means that once again, that spirituality permeates every single thing that we do. And because of that, we are freed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one of the last pieces of advice I'll give you is that there are certain deeds that force our hand. There are certain deeds that force us to be sincere. Like we have no choice but to be sincere. And I'll give you a couple examples. But y'all are pretty smart, alhamdulillah, and I'm sure y'all can come up with examples as well. But, and something like praying in the last third of the night, right? When everyone else is asleep, the world is asleep, it's just you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you got up in the last third of the night and everyone else is sleeping and nobody knows you got up, there is no way for you to be insincere. You can't. Because it's you and Allah, that's it. Right? The only way for you to ruin that sincerity is to be like, yo, I got up for Qiyam today. You know, here you go. Hashtag pious Muslim or whatever. Right? Like you can, yeah. But in that moment, at the very least, in that moment, you are sincere because you have no choice but to be sincere. Right? So the more we do those type of deeds, the deeds that force our hand, right? Like we have no choice but to be sincere in that matter. Right? The more it will help us get in touch with that aspect of our spirituality. So once again, we need to have that dimension to our lives. Just as like I said, I'm not here to badmouth social media or say that we shouldn't be on social media. I'm literally on like every single social media site that's out there, right? My point is that we take a step back and we reevaluate our lives, just as we spend time on social media, just like we work on our public face, sometimes literally, right? Hashtag filter, right? Likewise, we work on our private life as well. Likewise, we work on our spirituality and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to reach our maximum potential with the barakah and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.